Hi, Emily. Welcome to the International Dentist Podcast.
Thank you so much for having me.
This is so exciting. So I can't wait for everyone to hear all of the great things that you're going to share with us today, but especially all of the insights, so valuable and important for all the international dentists. So let's start first by introducing you. Tell me a little bit about what you do, and then what is it that you do that is so related to the international dentist on your everyday job?
Absolutely. So I'm the Senior Director of Application Services at the American Dental Education Association. My team manages 4 application services for the dental professions. So particular to your audience, I manage ADEA CAAPID, which is the application for internationally educated dentists pursuing advanced standing programs in the United States. My team also works with ADEA PASS, which is the application to residencies, and ADEA which is the application to a 4-year traditional dental school program. So we work with the actual application. Our members at ADEA are the schools and the programs. And so we talk a lot with them about what they're looking for in applicants and translate into an online application that applicants can submit one set of materials and apply to multiple programs. So we work with the applicants and the schools and really facilitate the information sharing as part of the application.
Excellent. So perhaps this journey actually applies to everybody in dentistry. So whoever is going to be at some point in an education system in the United States, whether this is an intended future to be dentist or an international dentist coming to the United States or somewhere around the middle, they all go through some of these services that you under the umbrella of ADEA host, correct?
Absolutely. Yeah. And most of the programs across the United States participate in our services. There are some exceptions, but a majority of the applicants will be interacting with these application services if they're planning to pursue education in the United States.
Excellent. So why do you think that there is a need for a centralized application system? As I know that that's something very common in America for a lot of things, but maybe not so common in other countries.
That's a great point. So this is actually the 50th year anniversary of ADEA So we've been doing this for a really long time. And the goal of a centralized application service is to really help applicants who don't have to apply then to 5 or 6 or 12 different schools with different materials and different applications. Our goal is to make it one process for everybody. So, for example, in dental schools, a lot of people are applying to 10 plus programs. And with an application service like ADEA CAAPID, they can apply one time and then designate their application to be sent for review to, 5 or 6 or 10 schools. So hopefully it saves them time. We also have some really cool tools for the programs to use as they're reviewing applicants that help them see applicants in similar lights. So we know that all applicants are unique. They all have different benefits and backgrounds and ways that they could really add to a class. But the application tools that we provide helps those kind of shine through because the formatting is all the same for the programs. So we really work to benefit both the applicants and the programs there.
Excellent. And I'm going to pick on something you said because I've been in the other side of the table reviewing some of these packages, right? So what this looks like for the one receiving it, it's a standardized looking package for all of the applicants. And then maybe for those that are applying, I work with people frequently trying to find a way of jumping out a little bit, having something on their content that differentiates them from the other candidates.
Yeah.
And not to say that we're putting them all equal, but the program directors do receive the information organized by your team in certain way that all of the packages consist of about the same. Is that correct?
It's true. And to your point, I think the word like a centralized or a standard format can be a little bit scary because it feels like an individual kind of disappears in the package, so to speak. And I don't think that individuals disappear necessarily, but it does make for an easy review to say, hey, all of the board results are on page 9. right? It's always there for somebody who's reviewing can go and look at it. So it's not necessarily erasing the uniqueness of an applicant, but it is set up to facilitate a process where programs might be looking at hundreds of applications.
Absolutely. I think it's very valuable to see it from that light so the applicant understands when first coming to the United States, the first thing you hear, especially for those interested on advanced standing or getting a D.M.D. or D.D.S. program, they will go through CAAPID, correct? And you're going to talk a little bit more about the differences between that service and others. But when they're coming in maybe with some standing alone documents. And as you mentioned, even years back when I applied for residency, I still have to mail the application separately to programs, which generates, for those that are just joining the program right now and then just understanding this right now, 10, 12, 15 years ago, these represented, if you wanted to apply to 10 schools, you have to make 10 different packages of this, mail them over, have them arrive who knows when, and then losing track and not knowing exactly what people wanted. So this is such a great service and then such a comfort for the applicant knowing that their information first is protected. It will deliver safely to program directors. So you will ensure that that information will arrive. And also it's helping the program directors, as you said, navigating through this information with ease.
Exactly. No stamps involved. Everything's online. Hopefully it does reduce some of the anxiety because it's a tough process. And our goal is to make it just a little bit easier.
Yeah, I'm sure you do. And that's with some of the things that you're coming along with, it's becoming easier and easier and better for sure. But you mentioned two products or two sites that people are probably very familiar with. Or I hope they're very familiar with. One is CAAPID and the other one is PASS. So do you mind sharing light a bit on what are the two types of international applicants that will go through CAAPID and what are the ones that will go through PASS?
Sure. So there are some applicants that might be considering an advanced standing program, which is a program that ends with a D.D.S. or a D.M.D., or a residency program, whether that's a specialty or a general practice residency, for example. And it depends on an applicant's goals of what they want to do after their program. And if licensure is part of that equation, the applicant is going to have to do some homework on what is best for them. But CAAPID generally is for graduates of dental schools outside of the United States and Canada who would like to pursue a D.D.S. or a D.M.D. This, in some people's opinions, is the most direct path to licensure. Having a U.S. dental degree, really sets somebody up for that. The ADEA PASS, on the other hand, is the application service for the residencies. So again, dependent on one individual's goals of what they want to do, they might pursue a residency based on their state licensure or their academic institution, what they'd like to do. There's also ADEA-ADSAS, and for most international dentists, it's not part of the consideration. But I also speak with some people who have attended dental school in their home country but didn't graduate. Now, for ADEA CAAPID specifically, graduation is important. Programs are looking for applicants who have graduated from their home country. So if there is somebody who has done a few years but hasn't graduated, they might also consider looking into ADEA-ADSAS as well.
That's actually an excellent point, especially as people might jump into this information at some point in their career, maybe right before they graduate from dental school. I get a lot of questions from people maybe in their third or fourth year of dental school in countries where dental school is 5 years. And they debate, like knowing what the process will be. And they know 100% that they will end up in the United States due to family or personal reasons. So they enter on that debate of, should I wait until I graduate? Should I go now and step back? I actually didn't know before we had this conversation earlier that there is a separate application system for them. So thank you for bringing that up. We'll make sure we leave the resources available on the comment notes for the show. So that way people can access to this information if they are in dental school, have not graduated yet, and are considering or exploring what will be the possibilities for them of an education in the U.S.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. A lot of people contact ADEA or even the programs and say, which one should I do? And our answer is always, what do you want to do? That's really a personal question of what is my background? What is my history? What are my goals? and what would I like to do with a degree. And all of that plays into what program to pursue and therefore what application service to go through.
I wonder, from the number of questions you receive, which I'm sure that you get hundreds and thousands of questions a month, what do you see as the most common questions or mistakes people make as they're trying to understand their process or as they're going through the application altogether? What are some of those things that you wish that you could just say, copy, paste to 20 people? This is information valuable for everyone.
It's interesting because I think my perspective on that is different than like program perspective on that. Everybody has kind of that one thing that they think, oh, I wish everybody knew. Some of the things that I have heard a lot that I share, in terms of advice a lot, is being ready when you're ready to apply. There are applicants that come through that never complete their application. So they get through halfway through the process and then they don't have something. So they haven't lined up somebody to write a letter of recommendation, or they're not able to access a transcript. They haven't studied enough to meet English language requirements. And so really being ready, I think, is really important. And that includes learning about the process. There are a lot of cultural pieces to the application that come up time and again when I'm interacting with programs. One kind of basic one is capitalization. The expectation for capitalization, particularly for names, is first letter only. And I think in other countries, full capitalization for all the letters in your name is common. But a lot of the tools that our programs use the way the applicant has entered their name. And so it does cause kind of a challenge then to email somebody back and the capitalization is not correct. That's just an example of understanding some of the expectations of how to complete the application in a way that is helpful to the review process on the other side. So it's about, sharing your journey and sharing how you'll be successful. But then the programs then use that information, being aware of that as well.
Oh, well, there is so much there. I took like 3 notes of things that I want to dive into. So let me just first, for the capitalization part, I will just say that that's part of the cultural awareness, coming to the United States. I personally experienced a challenge first of writing emails. That was my first cultural shock, professionally speaking. I recognized that maybe when I was at school, I learned how to write letters, dear so-and-so in Spanish.
Yeah.
But translating that into a different language and translating it in English and in email, it was a completely new experience, especially not knowing who you're referring to on the other side. And so I think that's something that everybody could learn from. And there are tons of videos and information online on how to write professional emails. So that way you're already making the work easier for everyone in a way, but you're also setting yourself up for success because you're showing that cultural competency of the place that you're coming in and the things that you're planning on doing, right?
Right. And first impressions count. And the application for a lot of people is your first impression.
It is. And there will be from there other opportunities that if you practice those real experiences as future opportunities, then you're going to continue to learn how to develop. You mentioned a few things that people, when saying ready, like only apply when you're ready. And I'm going to pick on that because that's something that I tend to dig in a lot with people, what truly ready means, right? Because readiness for some might be when I feel that I can, when I have the money, when everything in my life aligns. But you're talking about readiness of requirements. So when your requirements are in the right place, a lot of people try to rush certain things. Part of it is the unknown, like not understanding how long things take and then what is the process involved with something. But you talked about 2 things. One is readiness in the language, like proficiency in English. And I know a lot of people might not get the right TOEFL score, which might hold them back. And I'm sure you get that question a lot. Like, what if I have this TOEFL? I have everything else, but my TOEFL score is not yet the one. What should they do? Should they wait until they have the one that the school asked for, or should they still apply? And the other one you mentioned was recommendation letters. A lot of people don't know that you also have a centralized place for these recommendation letters, and then people don't need to necessarily ask others to write, correct?
That's Correct. Yes. So first to your question about TOEFL. So each program has their own TOEFL requirements, and they make their own exceptions, whether or not somebody attended school in English or has other language, they've met other language requirements. A lot of those are institution-based. The dental school is part of a larger institution that sets some of those minimums. And so being aware of what those minimums are, or recommendations is really key. If you don't meet a school's minimum, it's not really in your best interest to apply. And there's always the opportunity to ask questions of the programs, but those are published for a reason. Those are available for a reason. I will say, in addition to a standardized English exam like TOEFL, being ready for an interview is also really important. And being aware of how to present yourself and the language that's used is also part of that. So the TOEFL score will get you in the door, but the interview and how you respond in an interview is really an important part of the package as well. For the letters of recommendation, the way it works in ADEA CAAPID is that an applicant will submit the name and contact information for their recommenders. So it might be, Dr. Smith, and this is their email address. It might be so-and-so from somewhere else. It's all electronic. And so you do have to have an email address for the person. And then that person writes a letter, submits it electronically, and it's sent to all of the programs. So this isn't somebody that's saying, this person would be great at ADEA University, because all of the schools will see that. So it's really important to make it standard, kind of like this person would make a great dentist for these reasons, or would be successful in your program for these reasons. There are alternatives though. We recognize that some people leave their home school, their home country with a letter in hand. This is the letter that somebody has given me, and I don't have access to them anymore. They don't have an email address for whatever reason. So we do offer the programs an opportunity to collect those in ADEA CAAPID. It's program by program. So there are some programs that won't accept those. But for those that do, the applicant can scan a copy of it and provide it as part of their application. And it gives the programs a more well-rounded picture of the applicant. But I will say the ones that are electronic that go through ADEA CAAPID are perceived differently because the applicant's not providing it. It comes directly from the recommender, and that holds a lot of weight with the programs.
I think that's so important. In many countries, recommendation letters are really not a thing. People are used to, when you want to get a recommendation of something, you either pick up the phone and ask about the person. Right. But this is the same figure, right? Just like it's impossible that ADEA can pick up the phone or the school can pick up the phone to everyone's applicant's past mentor or boss to figure out this information. So this is in a way that indirect way of us getting or somebody else getting the information from you. So I think for those that are preparing for application right now, be mindful that it's not about asking people letters. You're asking people to be available to write for you at the timeline that ADEA established. Like as a recommender, I will get an email with so-and-so ask a recommendation from you. So I'll have to log in there, whether it's on PASS or on CAAPID. It's a similar process, just a different style, but then I'll have to submit directly to them on a deadline. So if I miss the deadline as a recommender, that is on the responsibility of the applicant to make sure that the one that receives the information, receives the email, responds timely, because that delays your application too. The application is never completed, right? Until all of the letters are sent.
Yeah, that's an interesting point. So for somebody applying to CAAPID, to ADEA CAAPID, it's an upload. The letter writer has to create a document. We highly encourage it's on letterhead and it's signed. Those are very important. This isn't just a word processing document that somebody is uploading. It is signed and it's on letterhead. It is different if somebody's applying to a residency in ADEA PASS. A letter of recommendation comes through with there's a template and people are responding to questions in a form. So it is slightly different. But for those applying to ADEA CAAPID, make sure your recommender knows to put it on letterhead and to sign it. That really gives weight and authority to that letter.
That's very, very important. So let's put actually this on a timeline. I'm getting ready, but I don't want to make any of these mistakes of applying when I'm not ready. Yeah. When is it, knowing that the window opens in March? I think that's something that everybody knows. Application window opens in March. Yeah. How sooner than March, how way before I have to start preparing what? And then what are the timelines for things afterwards? What is your perspective from the Centralized Application Center?
So that's a big question I get a lot is, can I start early? Like, I'm ready to go. It's like January 1st and I'm really ready to go. We don't open the application until March. So there is no like getting in ahead of time. So all of the preparation is really on an individual basis. Now, this year, we're hosting the ADEA CAAPID Virtual Fair on December 1st. And it'll be a live event where people can come and speak to ADEA CAAPID customer service to ask questions about the application and to speak with programs. It's a chat only, no video, ask questions. We really are encouraging people to come with their questions. This isn't just like come to listen and to watch, but to say, I have a question about your program or about how to submit something. I would say this year, that's really the best place to start is to come to the virtual fair. It's free. We would love to make sure that people feel really prepared. I'd say that's also a really good time to start figuring out who's going to write your letter and talking with those individuals. A lot of people recommend interacting with your letter writers, maybe giving them your resume, talking to them about what you've done in the past so that they can write a personal recommendation for you. It's making sure that you know how to access your transcripts. If you are getting both an ECE and a WES evaluation, right? So Education Credential Evaluators and World Education Services are the two transcript evaluations that ADEA CAAPID accepts. If you're getting one or both, you have to facilitate that process. Get your original transcripts from your home country, send it to the ECE or WES, and when ADEA CAAPID opens, you can request those. So those are some things that you'll need to do. There's also national board requirements. There's TOEFL requirements. So all of those things are opportunities to prepare before ADEA CAAPID opens in March. And I will say it's great to apply early, but it's not critical the first, couple of days or even weeks. So take the pressure off a little bit for like the actual day that CAAPID opens.
So in perspective then, if I'm applying, and I know a lot of international dentists get stuck on the requirements they think are very daunting on them. And I'm going to refer specifically to board exams and TOEFL, because those are the score-based type of requirements. So they might get delay months and years trying to achieve these two goals. And they forget maybe about all these other things, right? So maybe start thinking on the application as a complex being, not only these two exams, because the truth is that once you have this, you still don't have the key that opens the doors. That just enables you to be able to apply, but you still have to work in all these other pieces of information that, of course, programs will be looking into, but you will see it all together once you go in and create your profile to do the application. But let's say that you get to that point, you attend, and we're going to talk about the ADEA CAAPID Fair. I want to talk a bit more about what the virtual fair is about. What can people expect? So from the perspective of the participant, if I register to this on December 1st, what is in it for me? What am I seeing? What am I doing? What should I prepare? I know you talked about questions, but what type of questions should I be preparing?
Sure. So a virtual fair, kind of in the big picture, is a website that hosts an event. So think of it like going to a career fair in a gymnasium or a cafeteria somewhere where there's different tables set up to collect information and to interact with people, to engage. So the goal for an attendee is to come to this event and to leave understanding the process and the programs a little bit better. So that is to come to consume information. We'll have presentations, we'll have videos, we'll have flyers available, but it's also to engage. So it's to come and to talk to the customer service. If you have a particular case about a letter writer and you just aren't sure how it's going to fit into what ADEA CAAPID does, come and ask us about it. If you are considering where should you apply, how do you know which program is right for you? How do you learn about the culture at a particular dental school, or learning if they focus on research or public health or access to specialists, whatever it might be, come and ask. All of the programs, all of the representatives at ADEA CAAPID are there to answer questions. And so we entirely expect our attendees to want to come and get information, but also to ask. Now, it's okay if somebody comes and doesn't have questions, but if there are people planning to apply who are unfamiliar with the process or don't understand maybe, for example, who requires an ADEA score, or what are the larger programs in the United States, and why would I choose a larger program or a smaller program, or things like that, to come and ask those questions. We don't tie any of the activity at the virtual fair to anything else. So this doesn't reflect on anybody as an applicant, whether it's this year or in the future. It's really an information sharing event so that somebody who is applying to a program can feel confident that they are going through the process successfully.
Excellent. I think in perspective, so I'm going to paint a picture for people. So think about when you used to go to that conference place or cafeteria, and there were all those tables. So these are actually virtual tables, right? Little virtual rooms, and each school has their own virtual little room or chat where you come in, right? So in that chat, all you do is asking questions or get your questions answered by somebody on the other part of the chat or on the other side of the chat, which will be either a program director or a school admissions representative or someone like that, right?
Yes, that's correct.
Perfect. So it might be helpful that they have, as you mentioned, the questions prepared, which maybe they are general questions that apply to all programs, or they might be some specific questions if they know already which programs, and they kind of like hoop from little table to table or virtual room to chat with people, correct? So no cameras, no video, no need to speak English, but need to write in English. So maybe type your questions ahead of time, prepare a Word document, spell proof it so you know that it's well written, and then maybe just go there and prepare to get your questions answered.
Absolutely, and have conversations. I will say an important piece to that is if your question can be answered by going to the school's website, I would go to the school's website. That's an important one. If the school's website says you need to have passed the integrated board, you don't need to ask. It says it on the website. And so I think we're really using this as a space for questions that aren't answered in other places. And we do look at the transcripts to see if there's other opportunities for ADEA to step in with resources to help in the future. So this also helps people coming up behind you.
Excellent. So perhaps for questions that are on the website, because I know every website is very different, and then navigating the dental school websites alone could be a challenge, right? Because you don't even know necessarily how things are called. So maybe I personally recommend people to create a list of ideal topics or things that are important to you. I call them like wish list of a school. You know what things are important to you: culture, exposure to research, exposure to volunteer opportunities, specialty, whatever it is that is important, your priority list, and then try to first get those questions or get that information from the website. Whatever you don't find on the website, that is very basic information of that regard, then you could maybe come in, as you said, and then get those questions answered. And I also noticed that the type of questions being also on the other side, asking a program director a question that is more belonging to an admissions officer, it is kind of like defeating the purpose, right? So there are questions that I feel that are more pertinent to a program director or a faculty, and others that are more related to an admissions officer. And some people might not understand the difference between what an admission officer does and what a program director does. What is your perspective on that?
That's true. So I would say the admissions officer is the one facilitating the admissions process. So they're the ones setting up the interviews, doing potentially initial reviews, making sure that the applicants have met certain minimum requirements like a TOEFL score. And setting up admissions committee meetings. So they're really doing operations, the logistics of it. In some cases, they also help make decisions, but the program director is really the acting kind of clinical and operational person of the program that is going to run an admissions committee and is going to help make decisions. The program director is somebody who these new students are going to be with throughout the duration of their program, whereas the admissions staff really facilitate getting people through the process, through interviews, into and enrolling in the program, and then they get to start the next class. So I'd say the two are very closely related in the sense that they have a relationship and they work well with each other throughout the process. But if you have a question about like, how do I get a letter to you is probably better for the admissions officer versus how much research or public health am I going to be exposed to throughout the program is probably a better question for the program director.
That is a great example. So I'm going to go back to the journey and the path. So let's say that I'm very excited with this. I definitely want to attend this virtual fair. I'm all going to be ready. Where can I find more information about it? And then let's remind people again, this is going to happen December 1st of 2022. Tell me a little bit more where to find the information, how to register to this free event, and then what comes next. Let's say if I cannot attend, can I still find some of these resources elsewhere?
That's great. So all of the information is on ADEA.org. The registration as well as additional information. And I believe there's also a list of the schools participating on our event site. We're going to have content available before. So for anybody who registers, we'll get some content ahead of the event to help you prepare, to help understand what is a virtual fair, how do you engage. And then we're also going to have it available after the first. So if somebody is not available on the first, or the time zone doesn't work out for them, that I would encourage those people to still register because we will have the videos and the chat transcripts from the written chat in each booth available after the event. So whether you come to the live event or you're not able to, the site will remain open past the first for at least a month. So if people can come back and get that information through the first of the year. And get video content as well as the transcripts and all of the engagement from the first.
Super. So again, if you are a foreign trained dentist, international dentist in the United States or planning to come and get a license eventually in the country, you must register for this event December 1st of 2022. Whether you're attending or not, if you know somebody that is interested in this process, please get this information handed to them as it's the first step of the process of getting ready.
Yes, please come. I will be there. It's free. We're really setting this up as an opportunity just to share information and make sure everybody's prepared.
And I think it talks highly on the commitment you have and the commitment that ADEA had put on really making this process easy, easier, accessible, and open for everyone. So I commend you all for all of the efforts you're putting and then the intention of doing something special for the international dentists. I think you understand very well that there are differences and you want to bridge those gaps with knowledge and information. So I commend you for that. And thank you on behalf of every international dentist, please, thank you. Thank you for doing all that and putting so much effort.
That's kind. Thank you. I'm excited to speak with students. We're really excited to help. That's really our goal here. And so I hope to see everybody there, or not see everybody there, but chat with everybody there.
Hopefully, yes. And then those that at least are not able to connect, they will register and they will get the information afterwards and stay connected. Super. So
absolutely.
Going back to the journey, let's say I attended to the virtual fair on December 1st, or I access to the information afterwards. I'm getting ready and I'm off for March. Application opens. I'm in good standing. I apply. What happens after the application closes? And then how is it that the program directors are going to receive this information? How do they make the choices in terms of when they call? What happens afterwards? Just paint that picture a little bit so we can all walk through the process together.
Oh, these are hard questions here. So first, when does ADEA CAAPID close? That's a great question. And there's not one answer. So even though my team manages like the centralized process, the programs really have a lot of autonomy in how they set up their program. In ADEA CAAPID, most programs close over the summer or over the fall. We have some that close a little bit earlier or close a little bit later. But once the application opens in March, each program has its own deadline. I think the earliest one is in May. And so that gives everybody, no matter where they're applying, at least a few months to get things in to really make sure that the application is ready. Once the application is open, though, schools and programs have access to data as it's coming in. So I think that brings us to like, how are they getting information? What are they doing with it? I say that I can't really make a statement that really encompasses the 40 programs that participate in ADEA CAAPID. They're all different. They all process applications differently. Most, though, are not going to wait until their deadline to start reviewing applicants. So if the program deadline is September 1st, the programs might be reviewing applications over the summer. They're not necessarily going to wait for that deadline. Now, that's not for everybody. As I said, every program is different, but it does kind of tend to encourage applicants to apply well before the deadline if their materials, are ready. So if somebody is ready to apply early, if they're not ready, don't rush to apply, certainly. There are 3 stages of getting the information from the applicant over to the program. Now, the first step is that the applicant has to submit their application. So when somebody opens an application, they're filling out information. The programs aren't seeing that. If you're not submitted, they're not seeing it. So if you make a mistake or if somebody wants to go in and change their answer, that's okay. But that first step is submitting. That means, like me as an applicant, I've given all of my information. I've requested all of my documents. I've sent an email to the recommenders, and I've submitted. The second piece is being complete. Now, that means that all the documents are in. So I can submit, and there are still letters coming in. People are still sending letters. My transcript is still coming in. Once all of those materials come in, then the applicant is complete. Now, I know some people are going to say, how do I find out if I get there or not? And there's actually a status check inside ADEA CAAPID. So somebody can go in and see, person A has submitted my letter, but person B has not. So you can actually follow up with the person who hasn't submitted. Same with transcripts. But once all of those documents come in, the applicant is complete, and that is the final status. That is where you want to be. At that point, the programs do have the information almost immediately. So this means that they have electronic access to the data and to all of the documents. What they choose to do with it is really on them. So again, each program is different in terms of what they're doing, when they're doing it, who's doing the review, when they reach out to applicants. That's another question I get is, when will I hear? And that's really a question that you would ask the program at the virtual fair, for example. Like, what's your process look like? When do you typically do interviews? And so those are all part of it. I'd say kind of like the third step, the third part is beyond ADEA CAAPID, in the sense that there are some programs that have supplemental applications. So this is a request for information and materials outside of the application, outside of ADEA CAAPID. And programs usually will tell you, you have to do it at this point in time, and this is what's required. So I'd say make sure your email address is updated, because even though you might be complete in ADEA CAAPID, there may be additional steps to take from the program's perspective, and they will certainly let you know what those are.
Okay. So in perspective, I'm going to try to do a summary of what you said, because there was so many good pieces of information there. So application, I can start my application, but it's not completed until all of the information required is there. I think that's intake 1. Once it's submitted, I cannot go back and change, correct?
Not necessarily. So there are pieces of the application that can be changed. So if you move, your address can be changed. Okay. A lot of parts of the application can be added to, not changed. So for example, we have an experience section. If an experience changes or somebody gets a new job or has a new volunteer experience, they can add it, but they can't go back and change what has already been submitted.
So another reason why being prepared means truly being ready. So what you put out there is you need to ensure that it's the best version of your documents, the best, most prepared version of yourself when you're up for application. Okay. Then from there, it becomes automatically available to the program directors. They're able to jump in anytime, which means that they could also decide to call people for admissions or for interviews, even if their deadline has not come yet, right? I've seen that. And let's talk a little bit about what enrolling admissions is, or rolling basis means. Do you mind explaining that? Because international people hear that term and don't know what it means exactly.
Sure. So enrolling admissions usually means one of two things. One version is that an admissions process is open all the time and people are reviewing applications all the time. I think for ADEA CAAPID, we don't use it in that way, because most programs have a very defined application process, right? From March until June, for example, it's very defined in terms of when applications are accepted. In ADEA CAAPID, I think rolling admissions is a more frequent term when we talk about the review process. So the programs aren't necessarily waiting to a certain date to make some decisions. So if the deadline is July 1st, that may mean that they're starting to make offers for the interview process in May, because it's rolling. They're continuing to review as applications come in. So there is some merit to talking about applying early. You have to weigh applying early and being ready. I mean, that's a real personal decision for people. Applying early is great. Applying the first day ADEA CAAPID opens is really not necessary. But waiting to the deadline could potentially put somebody at risk for not having any interview spots available, even if your application is fantastic. And again, each program is going to do it differently. So that might be an opportunity to learn more about the programs when you come to the virtual fair.
I think you highlight something very important that I might tie up to something else I wanted to ask you, which is, let's say perhaps I waited until the last minute, because we think on deadlines as the last minute I have to have a chance. And in this context, it's really, you might not have what we're saying is that we might not have an equal chance to all programs if you wait until the last minute, because there might be less spots available already by that time in some programs. Maybe not in all the cases, but in some cases could be true. So let's say that I waited until the last minute because I did not know this information. And then I have an unsuccessful cycle. Nobody calls me. What happens the following year? If I want to apply again, and now I know that I have to be ready, not right when the application opens, but early on, do I have to start all over again? Or is there any of this process that is already, that just needs to be updated? Like, what's going to be my journey second time around?
So first of all, people in those positions are not alone. We hear about that a lot. But ADEA CAAPID has a reapplicant process. And reapplying means that you're going through the process for 2 consecutive years. They do have to be consecutive years, but that you can pull information from last cycle into this cycle. So That includes like your experience that you did from 10 years ago to 2 years ago hasn't changed. So we'll pull that forward so you don't have to add it in again. If you took the TOEFL, we'll pull that in again. You know, a lot of the information about who you are and your background hasn't changed. Now, for people who are reapplying, it's really tempting on day one to pull all the information forward and submit. But a lot of programs talk about wanting to see growth. You know, it's been a full year for some people since they've applied. Maybe it's just been 6 or 8 months, but what has happened? How has that changed? It might not be like getting a whole new job or a whole new set of experiences, but it is looking at the application and saying, how can I strengthen it? Do I need to retake the TOEFL? Do I need to look at my personal statement? Is there something in there that I could do that highlights how I've grown over the last year? Is there an experience that I can tell my letter writers that, okay, over the last year, something has changed. I have worked, I have volunteered, I have done something that makes my application, shows the improvement over the last year. And so while we do have this reapplicant process that's really intended to help applicants, we don't have to go through everything all over again. It is an opportunity to sit back and to submit information that might have changed over the past year.
I think you pointed the reflection piece. I think showing the growth, showing that you took that year or months to reflect upon. But let's say if it was more than a year, you pretty much have to start over your application process, correct? So there is no chance of a reapplication if I have a year gap between my prior application.
That's correct. It has to be consecutive years. But if somebody's applying in 3 consecutive years, they can pull it forward. But the information is only valid to move forward for 1 year.
Okay. And will the program directors know that I have applied other programs in the past and attempted to apply or fail? Like, will they get that when they get me the following year?
So there is a question in the application about where have you applied and have you applied before? So programs are looking for that. They want to know if you've applied before, how have you improved, even if you didn't apply to my program last year. The system that we use doesn't share that data. So it really is a piece of information the applicants divulge. But they do ask those questions and they do like to know, how have you improved? I mean, don't we all, right? I think that's kind of just the way we are in terms of if you weren't successful at something last year, like, let's think about it and how can we improve this year? And that growth trajectory is really important.
It is fundamental. And I think kind of like closing up, I'm going to ask you, with experience, so unique experience you have working with so many international dentists, as you know, getting them help every day with different types of questions, with different situations they encounter, and then being in the situation you are, which you're dealing with both sides of the equation, right? You're dealing with program directors and universities on one end, and you're dealing with applicants with a lot of anxiety, fear, and all of the emotions that come along this process. If you could think about a piece of advice that you will give to these international dentists, either coming right now or who have failed in prior processes, something that you have not shared, or if you want to wrap up your advice to close, what would you tell them?
I think the thing that comes to mind is kind of what tugs on my heartstrings, which is lots of people do this more than once. Lots of people aren't successful in whatever way they define success. That does not mean that future applications are going to be unsuccessful. Speaking with programs a lot and interacting with program directors and admissions officers from the U.S. dental schools, I know that they are looking at lots of really talented, really amazing applicants, and they might only have 25 spots. And so being unsuccessful or not getting in is not that you have to throw everything out and start over again. It's really about those incremental changes of how you improve. And that, as you talked about, that self-reflection of how can I make a difference in my application this year. And it's not always really doing something big and grand because, as I said, there are so many really good applicants that are qualified for these programs. But it is learning to position yourself and to tell your story, to share how you've grown. I think that's a pretty unique perspective that's American in like, I have failed before. I am vulnerable. I'm sharing my growth. Growth means that you weren't always super successful. And being okay with that and sharing that and understanding that your past non-acceptance is not indicative of the future. I hope that gives people a little bit of confidence in terms of, moving forward, because we are all rooting for you and we're wanting to see you succeed.
We feel that. I feel that. So I'm confident that with the support of your office, the support that ADEA puts in, the program directors, emphasis on really trying to get not only the best applicants, but giving everybody an equal opportunity to develop and become that type of professional that we need in the profession. I think ultimately that is the goal, that we're bringing competent, qualified, caring, empathic individuals to the dental profession in the United States. And with that goal in mind, I will close just by saying thank you, Emily, for sharing so much, not only great insights, but also personal pieces of advice and information that I'm sure will be not only valuable, but also very inspiring for many international dentists.
Thank you so much. Thank you for giving me this platform to share this. And I hope to see everybody at future ADEA events online or in person.
Please make sure to say hi to Emily when you see her.
Yes, please.